Sheikh Armiel Shaibu, thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile this morning, sir. Please unmute your mic.
Shaibu, thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile this morning, sir.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Happy New Year.
Please unmute your mic.
Right, so we would like you to listen to me directly rather than on the set that you are using to monitor the program. You have spoken the mind of the National Chief Imam, and many have been surprised that Muslims supporting a Christian group's advocacy for elections to be rescheduled so that they can go to worship God on the 7th of December 2024?
Thank you so much, Samson, and once again, Happy New Year.
Right.
This is the first time since the year began. Yeah, it is true. I mean, a delegation from the SDA Church paid a courtesy call on an eminent National Chief Imam on this very important subject matter. And their message was translated. I am the one who did the translation, and I used the language that is most understood by the eminent National Chief Imam, as I have been doing. And so he made a response that it is a petition in the right direction, knowing his spirit of mutual solidarity, mutual cooperation, mutual respect among practitioners of different religions in this country. But to really shed some more light on this angle, the preliminary position emanates from the understanding that democracy in practice, as opposed to democracy in theory, involves elements like inclusivity, participation, equality, justice, especially in an environment of interfaith diversity, so that everybody will really get its due share. Secondly, election and voting are national responsibilities on citizens. And we must all create an environment in which no particular section of society, regardless of its identity, whether religious, whether ethnic, whether cultural, will be sidelined or left behind or marginalized or deprived. And all those things, no particular citizen should be deprived. And so therefore, we must create an environment of equality where everybody will have the chance. Thirdly, in anticipation of multi-religious diversity, our Constitution had made provision for everybody to follow or to choose or follow any religion of choice. And not only that, to give manifestation to that choice or identity of religion. So within the space of our democracy, everybody must be given the chance to be able to exercise its franchise. That is the basis on which the Chief Imam said it is a petition well thought through, and it's also in the right direction. But let me also quickly add that for we as Muslims, Friday is not a holiday in the sense of the SDA Sabbath, because in our case, it is only prohibited to engage in worldly or mundane activity at the time when prayer has been called on Friday, up to the time of finishing our prayer. Now, post the prayer period, the Muslim is free to embark upon any mundane activity that are lawful within the ethical framework of Islamic teachings.
Okay.
So we must really create, but for the SDA, their doctrine says that on Saturday they cannot engage in any mundane activity.
Right.
So we must really create a space for them to be able to exercise their franchise. And I think that it is within the larger space of democracy, it's a good thing to do.
Right. And for someone like you coming from Codeo leadership, you would also understand this better. And the example you give with the Muslims will apply to the other, as it were, denominations of the Christendom who will go to church on Sunday, but after church, they are free to do anything. So if there were elections, they can go to church and return to vote. A Muslim can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
exactly.
Right. Now, their proposition is that it should be on the first Tuesday or second Tuesday, is it? First or second Tuesday of November. Where do you stand? So that you don't put a date to it. You don't put a date like 7th, and then some other year it may recur as a Sabbath, or it could be a Friday, or it could be a Sunday. That's their proposition. Yeah.
I think the idea is to avoid, to escape any of the days that are held as sacred or holy by any particular religion. That is the idea, that in order to escape it,
right,
so that we can keep convenience for everybody. Samson, I think in this country we are worried that voter turnout is on, it has been reducing over the years. But to really be democratic and to ensure that any person voted for as a president is really the choice of the people, really, really, in truth and in action, is the selection of the people. Then we must encourage people to vote so that the voter turnout will rise. I will be glad if we are able to hit 100% voter turnout.
Right.
So that truly, truly, any person who is voted for as the choice of the people, and not that a section, because of certain circumstance, will not vote.
Right.
This is the ground on which we think that if this arrangement will suit and make sure everybody will be able to vote, then I have no objection to that kind of arrangement. And it's something that must be open to the debate, continuous engagement and dialogue, and I'm sure we'll be able to arrive at a better arrangement.
Thank you very much for your time, Sheikh Aremia Shaibu, spokesperson for the National Chief Imam. Of course, those of you who know him, he's also in the Codeo leadership. Professor Emmanuel Akwete of the IDEG, thank you very much for joining us. We have attempted before to shift the date to November earlier. Marietta Brewer-Appiah upon then went to Parliament to move it. It appears the parties had agreed, but once she got in there, they changed their mind. The MPP changed their mind and it was defeated. How easy can this be achieved if you think it is something that ought to be pursued?
Sorry, I've been driving, so I haven't listened to everything, but that's what I think. I think this issue has come up before. Many of you wouldn't know, but in December 2008, after the second round, you know, when we had to go to the third round, a group of clergymen, that was the genesis of the Peace Council, the group that came together. And they said, I think we had to do the final vote, the third or so on a Sunday. And it then changed the conversation. Also, not just the SDA, but also amongst other groups. The Presbyterians and many others said, no, Sunday we have to go to church and we cannot do the voting and so on. But the compromise then became that, look, every Sunday is a big thing for most Christians. You could go to church or have it early or whatever, and then save time so that people can go and vote, because the time for closing polling stations was about 5 o'clock or 5 p.m. and so on. And this became the compromise. And they opened it. In fact, some of we had the Catholics, we had the Anglicans, we had the Presbyterians, all faith. And the Christian Council, you know, embodies a whole lot of them. So there was also that dimension that this was a duty to a nation. This was the right we should all exercise. And then they had met to think about how to bring about peaceful elections and peaceful post-elections. And they didn't see the contradiction with the worship of God, because the 24 hours God is worshipped every time, and so on. So it was quite interesting listening to their conversations. But it was resolved. It didn't change. You know, they kept it and said, look, it falls on Saturday mostly, but if local elections, that differs. That could happen on a weekday. And there are those who say that turnout is also low on in the local elections because mostly on weekdays, and people don't feel motivated very much. That this is something that they must do by all means, as against what happens in the national election. So they didn't resolve it that way. They said, look, let's all agree and find how best we can get our worship of God. We wouldn't suspend it, but we can so do it in a way and also exercise our civic rights and liberties or obligations. So in that case, I listened to just part of Sheikh Arimeya's contribution, which I thought was well informed from the position he stands. But to change the date, let's move to November and so on. It's not the month that determines which Saturday, whether it's the first week of the month that we should determine. I mean, in this case, it happens within the first week, isn't it?
Right.
So I didn't quite understand how we could adjust it because a whole lot of factors play the role in determining the date. And I also think that because it's a collective thing, it's a national thing, it is equally prayers to God, service to God and country. That's how we put it. We do not say service to only country. God comes first, service to God and country. And God wants us to be peaceful. He doesn't want us to be hurting ourselves and so on. So I think to want to see how would the church adjust? Because you couldn't say that the entire population go to that particular church.
Okay.
But some segments. How best can the church also see how best it could bend, or it could adjust, or it could hold its services? I don't believe it holds services 24 hours on that day.
All right.
And so let's see the rational approach. That state says we are serving God and country.
All right.
And
Thank you.
On that day we pray as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, for joining us briefly with your insights also, particularly because of where you sit in our democratic good governance, things. Let me now bring in Roxanne Nelson Dafeamapo. Election is a national duty. The church's right to exist, to operate freely, is premised on the safe democratic structures guaranteed by the freedom to elect leaders. So this is a texter. He says, let's not set bad precedent. The SDA Church must be progressive in the leadership of their people. One single day in a year to participate in a democratic exercise that underpins the very existence of the church is a national assignment for all.
I agree with the tester, but I want to assure him that there are already legal regimes that should have been had recourse to and assured the SDA Church. So let me anchor my submission on some key provisions of the Constitution. Article 42 is the effect that every citizen of Ghana of 18 years of age or above and of sound mind has the right to vote and is entitled to be registered as a voter for the purposes of public elections and referenda. So this is the fundamental basis upon which the SDA is making its case. Now, where we appear to be having problems is in respect of Article 63.4, if I got it right, 63.2 and Article 1124. 63.2, what does it say? It says that in respect of the presidential elections, the election of the president shall be on the terms of universal adult suffrage and shall, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, be conducted in accordance with such regulations as may be prescribed by constitutional instrument by the Electoral Commission and shall be held so as to begin, A, where a president is in office not earlier than 4 months no later than 1 month before his term of office expires. And B, in any other case within 3 months after the office of president becomes vacant. Now, Article 1124, if I don't want to bore you, it's to the effect that subject to Clause 2 of Article 113 of this Constitution, a general election of members of Parliament shall be held within 30 days before the expiration of the period specified in Clause 1 of that article, and a session of Parliament shall be appointed to commence within 14 days after the expiration of that period. So, these 3 constitutional provisions is what mandates SDA to assert their right to vote, to be registered, and when registered, so that on the day of a certain public elections, they can participate. Now, they are alleging a conflict of their faith. A certain Saturday on coming December 7th will be the Sabbath.
About 2,000 of their facilities are also used for polling.
Yes, I'll get there.
And their members are also used.
About
so
they have about 300.
Just do it on the first week of, the first Tuesday of November or first Tuesday of December. That's all they want.
I've listened to them. And I agree with them entirely. I don't think there's anybody in the NDC or anybody in the NPP against. But the point I've been making, which I made yesterday on another platform, is that if you look at CI 127, Regulation 23, which talks about special voting list.
Okay.
There's a provision for special voting. But what we have done in the law is to tie your right to apply to be put on the voting list to participating in election duties. So we can enlarge that election duties to include for any other reason.
There was a time journalists were even excluded, even though we have always been included.
Your FM station called me earlier this morning, and I said that I recall just the last election cycle, the 2020, journalists were, because the case was made that because you were so involved in the coverage of the election, which has become like a major mandate for you,
right?
You had a right to be added to the security forces, so to speak, who were mandated because they will be participating in the election duties, to be put on the special voting list. So we could ask journalists, we could ask the SDA.
All right.
All that the Electoral Commission has to do is to make a larger logistical arrangements. So that, for instance, in Sabbath, if the special voters list contains 1,200, we are the SDA members, we are journalists. We could have 2,000 people voting for a special day. The next day we vote. We don't have, this is a storm in a teacup.
Okay. Professor Ramsford Jampo, thank you very much for joining us. What will be your brief take on this? Also, because of where you stand, you have observed this process, you have worked with the IEA, where proposals were being made about how to change things in respect of our voting days, I suppose. What do you say? A good call?
Well, this is about the one that SG is asking that elections shouldn't be held
Yes, they are saying that they would wish that the elections are held on the first Tuesday of November or the first Tuesday of December, because the 7th of December 2024 is a Sabbath and they are not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. This has happened before and they don't want it to recur.
Oh, okay. I think there is the greatest of respect to them. Ghana, our constitution guarantees the free expression of our religion. But at the same time, the constitution says we are a secular state. And so, if it is a secular state, people have got the right to exercise their religion, but it must not be exercised in a manner that sort of project their religious beliefs and faith and ideals over those of the other people who also have their different religious beliefs and faith and ideals. So the point is that given that it's a secular state, any day is fine. Otherwise, if we allow this tomorrow, if election day falls on Friday,
Muslims will tell us that, well, they go to the mosque on Friday, and so we shouldn't. And if it falls on Sunday, you have a ponderant majority of Ghanaians being Christians. They may say that it is going to disturb the day on which they have elected to worship their God.
Prof, it's only a plea they are making, and if that plea is taken, there will not be a conflict for Muslims or any Christian group anymore.
Well, it's a plea, but if that plea is taken, it is possible that it will open the floodgates for similar pleas to also be made. And so, the greatest of respect to them. Yes, voting is a national duty. It's an important exercise. I expect them to participate. But if one believes that your religious beliefs and ideas are so important that you want to disregard voting and go to church, I think it should be a matter of choice that one would want to make. We should be careful. Once the Constitution says, now it got to the point that there was one day in a university where we wanted to begin a program, and on the program outline, there was opening prayer. And some people took issues that, look, why should it be an opening Christian prayer? Let us all observe 1 minute of silent prayer for ourselves, because Ghana is a secular country. So if you say Christian prayer, then it's like you are giving primacy to Christianity over the other religions. I'm a Christian, and I believe in Christian ideas. But so long as the fundamental laws of the land says we are a secular country, we should be careful not to allow all religious beliefs, all religious sects and states to also come in making pleas and demands. Today it's SDA. If it is granted, tomorrow it will be Baha'i faith, it will be Hare Krishnas, it will be Muslims, it will be Christians, and we create a state of confusion and a state of factorialism in the body politic. It's not something that we should encourage. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Ransford Jampo of the Political Science Department of the University of Ghana. And this is where we draw the curtains on Newsfile for today. I'm Samson Ladia. Yanini, join me tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. on my weekly legal clinic as I have lawyers, lecturer, UPSA Law School, and senior associate, Owusu Dapa Law and Associate, Gertrude Amoko Ama, and Richard Obeng Mensah, lecturer, Faculty of Law, KNUST, and Managing Solicitor, Light Associate. Join me to look at the question of law and morality, why side chicks lose in courts. Have a good afternoon.